Uudet tuulet puhaltaa. Julius Kivi-podcast ilmoittaa, että Donald Trump on nyt Yhdysvaltain uusi presidentti. Ja tällä julistuksella se on nyt virallista.
Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
Kamala Harris piti häviöpuheensa luonnollisesti teleprompterin kanssa. Näistä vaaleista on turha valittaa, sillä Trump otti haltuunsa sekä senaatin, edustajainhuoneen että kansan enemmistöäänet. Kamala voitti kuitenkin äänestyksen osavaltioissa, missä ei vaadittu kuvallista henkilöllisyystodistusta. Yllätyitkö? Minä en. Ylen katkera kirjoitus onkin mielenkiintoista luettavaa. Alaotsikossa kerrotaan, että Trump tunnetaan maailmalla rikollisena. Yle nostaa Trumpin meriteiksi Pariisin ilmastosopimuksesta vetäytymisen, Putinin tapaamisen sekä valehtelun tai harhaanjohtavien väitteiden määrän. Sukupuolidysforiasta kärsivä Yle kuvailee Trumpia myös machomieheksi. Voi. Näin katkeraa tekstiä en ole aikoihin lukenut. Siinähän ne kaikki hölynpölyt tuli yhdessä jutussa. Valeuutiset, transagenda, äärifeminismi ja tietysti ilmastonmuutos.
The most urgent tasks, not only for our movement, but for our country, is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax. The ocean is rising, it's coming, it's within 300 years we're going to gain 1/100th of an inch in the ocean and have a little more beachfront property. It's going to be a terrible thing. No, it's a hoax. The whole thing is it's so crazy. In the meantime, our factories can't perform. They want us to use wind, intermittent wind. Darling, I'd like to watch the president tonight on television. No, you can't. The wind isn't blowing, right? The wind isn't blowing. There's no television tonight, darling. The wind isn't blowing. And by the way, our house went down to about 30% of the value because we're near a windmill that makes a lot of noise, kills all our birds, and ruins the landscape. Other than that, it's a wonderful thing for the environment. These people are crazy. But they're radical climate people, and I don't believe they mean it. They can't mean it because it's too easy. They can't mean it. The radical left's fear-mongering about climate and our future is no longer just scaring American youth. It's destroying America's economy, weakening our society, and eviscerating our middle class. It's really hurting us. And conservative leaders, think tanks, and intellectuals must be fearless in calling out the lunacy of what you're seeing, and what you're being led into. The world is not ending. Our future is not dying. We have to defeat the climate hoaxsters once and for all. You know, they said we only had 12 years to live. That was 4 years ago, remember? They said our country has 12 years. And that was like, I said, oh, what happened? What happened? They said, it's the climate. I said, really? Oh, that doesn't make sense. So that means we only have 8 years. That's ridiculous. The real problem is with nuclear weapons, we may only have 6 months. You talk about global warming, that's the real global warming, not the global warming hoax that they don't even use it anymore. They call it climate change. Remember, they used to call it global warming. The planet is warm, but that wasn't working out too well because a lot of places were extremely cool. So they were getting killed. They were getting killed. And then they changed it all of a sudden. Climate change, because you can't miss on climate change. It can go up, it can go down, it can go 15 different directions. It's climate change, it's killing us. Now these people have got a lot of problems.
Äärifeministeillä menee nyt aamukahvit väärään kurkkuun. Nimittäin Trump teki juuri historiaa nimittämällä Valkoisen talon kansliapäälliköksi naisen. kun valtamediat niin Suomessa kuin maailmalla ihmettelevät, että mitä juuri tapahtui ja käyvät läpi niin kutsuttua sielun mustaa yötä, missä katkeruuden, vihan ja lopulta surun kautta synnytään uuden todellisuuden ymmärtämiseen, voimme hetken katsoa tätä kuvaa ja miettiä, miten äänestykset ovat menneet historiassa ja onko todellisuus sittenkin ollut jo pidempään erilainen. On se edelleen jännä nämä 2020 vaalit, mutta se on ollutta ja mennyttä. Sanoisin, että tässä on nyt vahva peiliin katsomisen paikka koko länsimaisella valtamedialla siinä, että kuinka irtautuneena todellisuudesta he ovat olleet. Tästä hienona esimerkkinä Scott Jenningsin puhe CNN:n vaalilähetyksessä. Scott kertoo, mistä on kyse, ja lapset kuuntelevat keskittyneesti, kun iskä puhuu.
This is a mandate. He's won the national popular vote for the first time since, for a Republican, for the first time since 2004. This is a big deal. This isn't backing into the office. This is a mandate to do what you said you were going to do. Get the economy working again for regular working class Americans. Fix immigration. Try to get crime under control. Try to reduce the chaos in the world. This is a mandate from the American people to do that. I think I'm interpreting the results tonight as the revenge of just the regular old working class American, the anonymous American who has been crushed, insulted, condescended to. They're not garbage. They're not Nazis. They're just regular people who get up and go to work every day and are trying to make a better life for their kids, and they feel like they have been told to just shut up when they have complained about the things that are hurting them in their own lives. I also feel like this election, as we sit here and pour over this tonight, is something of an indictment of the political information complex. I mean, we've been sitting around here for the last couple of weeks, and the story that was portrayed was not true. I mean, we were told Puerto Rico was going to change the election. Liz Cheney, Nikki Haley voters, women lying to their husbands. Before that, it was Tim Walz and the camo hats. Night after night after night, we were told all these things and gimmicks were going to somehow push Harris over the line, and we were just ignoring the fundamentals. Inflation, people feeling like that they were barely able to tread water at best. That was the fundamentals of the election. And so I think that both parties should always look at the results of an election and figure out what went right and what went wrong. But I think for all of us who cover elections and talk about elections and do this on a day-to-day basis, we have to figure out how to understand, talk to, and listen to the half of the country that rose up tonight and said, we've had enough.
Jonain päivänä meillä Suomessakin tulee vielä vastaavanlainen tilanne. Jonain päivänä. Zelenski onnitteli Trumpia ensimmäisten joukossa. Zelenski ilmeisesti toivoo, että mielistelemällä Trumpia hän voisi pelastaa itsensä haudasta, minkä on itselleen yhdessä Boris Johnsonin, Ursula von der Leyenin ja Joe Bidenin kanssa kaivannut. Trump sanoi Zelenskin viime tapaamisen jälkeen hänen olevan maailman paras bisnesmies.
I think Zelensky is maybe the greatest salesman of any politician that's ever lived. Every time he comes to our country, he walks away with $60 billion.
En usko, että Trump katsoo sitäkään hyvällä, kun Zelenski sanoi koko maailmalle Naton lehdistötilaisuudessa Trumpin ymmärtävän Zelenskin aikeet valmistaa ydinaseita. Zelenski oikeastaan heitti Trumpin bussin alle ja kuvittelee nyt, että kaikki on ihan normaalisti. No, ehkäpä pienellä oleskelulla kaikki voi unohtua. Tähän väliin sopiikin parhaiten tällainen kuva. Ukrainassa keskustelu armeijan värväysien laskemisesta 25 vuodesta 18 vuoteen käy kuumana. Zelenskin mukaan amerikkalaiset painostavat Ukrainaa laskemaan värväysikää, sillä yksinään länsimainen asetuki ei riitä, vaan tarvitaan lisää sotilaita. Eikös Ukrainalla olekaan riittävästi sotilaita? Myöskään Briteillä ei tule olemaan helppoa, sillä pääministeri Keir Starmerin työväenpuolue jäi kiinni vaalivaikuttamisesta Yhdysvalloissa. Työväenpuolueen operaatiojohtaja Sofia Patel laittoi LinkedInissä työtarjouksen, missä kyseli halukkaita matkustamaan rapakon toiselle puolelle auttamaan amerikkalaisia saamaan ensimmäinen naispresidentti. Näytetään näille jenkeille, miten vaalit voitetaan, hän sanoi. Trumpin kampanja-asianajaja jätti asiasta tutkintapyynnön Yhdysvaltain keskusvaalilautakunnalle. Keir Starmerin tukaluus syvenee, sillä brittien konservatiivit vaativat häneltä vastausta siihen, että aikooko brittien ulkoministeri David Lammy pyytää anteeksi Trumpilta kommenttejaan.
As leader of His Majesty's opposition, I will be taking a different approach to the last opposition by being a constructive opposition. And so I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order. And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?
Mr. Speaker, there will be many issues on which the Leader of the Opposition and I disagree, but there will be issues that do unite this House on national security and Ukraine, and I do look forward to working closely with her on that, and I will provide her with the information that she needs to discharge her duties. That's the right thing for the country, and it's far more important than party politics. And the Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister did not distance himself from the remarks made by the Foreign Secretary, and I'm very sure that President Trump will soon be calling to thank him for sending all of those North London Labour activists to campaign for his opponent.
Lisää vettä brittien myllyyn laittoi Slovakian pääministeri Robert Fico, jota brittien suurlähettiläs kritisoi esiintymisestä venäläisessä televisiossa.
I would like to respond to the outrageous statement by the British ambassador to Slovakia, Mr. Bakra, who criticized me for my appearance on Russian television. You should be more concerned about the quality of Western media coverage of the war in Ukraine, and you will see that it is often just crude propaganda defending the unsubstantiated. I ask you to refrain from such materials unjustifiably interfering in the politics of the sovereign Slovak government. The fact that you represent a larger and more powerful state in Slovakia does not entitle you to unacceptable behavior. Slovakia is not a colony of the UK. Secondly, if you, unlike me, claim that the West is interested in peace in Ukraine, give me a single positive example of a peace initiative by the West or the UK. There are no such examples. On the contrary, it was Western politicians who made sure that no realistic, ready-made peace agreement was signed in April 2022, just after the conflict began. And Zelensky's peace plan crumbled to dust as unrealistic.
Nyt kun brittien isoveli USA ei ole enää neokonservatiivien hallussa, jäävät britit yksin EUn kanssa selvittämään sotkuja, mitä ovat aiheuttaneet Euroopassa Ukrainan konfliktin takia. Trumpin valinta näytti aiheuttaneen aikamoisen paineaallon koko maailmaan. Nimittäin EU päätti järjestää hätäkokouksen Budapestissa. Orbanin junailemaan epäviralliseen jälkitapaamiseen osallistui vain kourallinen ministereitä ja kaikki EUn komissaarit boikotoivat tapaamista. Paineaalto osui myös Saksaan. sillä sen hallituskoalitio hajosi. Talousongelmien kanssa painiva Saksa ei päässyt hallituskoalitionsa kanssa sopimukseen finanssipolitiikasta. Scholz erotti valtiovarainministerin ja kaikki FDP-ministerit erosivat. Vihreistä demareista ja liberaalidemareista koostunut hallitus rypee noin 30% yhteiskannatuksessa. Uusi hallitus saatetaan nähdä jo vuoden 2025 alussa, mikäli Scholzin epäluottamuslause äänestetään läpi. Kaiken kukkuraksi energiahinnat Saksassa nousivat uusiin ennätyksiin. Kuukausien umpikuja ja lukemattomien itsekeskeisten terapiaistuntojen jälkeen tarvitsemme nyt kipeästi perustavanlaatuista poliittista uutta alkua johtaaksemme talouden ja koko maan ulos vakavasta kriisistä, johon se on syöksynyt ideologiavetoisen politiikan takia. AfDn parlamenttijohtajat Alice Weidel ja Tino Kruppalla sanoivat X:ssä julkaistussa lausunnossa. AfD-puolue Saksassa on voittanut jo 2 osavaltiovaalit ja vaatii Ukrainan tuen lakkauttamista ja kauppasuhteiden palauttamista Venäjän kanssa. He ovat siis rauhan puolella. Putin sanoikin viime syyskuussa, että Nord Stream 2-putkiston ehjänä olevalla osalla Saksa saisi napin painalluksella edullista kaasua. Mutta ikävä kyllä, hallituksen ylpeys käy kansalaisten etujen edelle. Ja koko koalition täytyy vaihtua ennen kuin sen suuntaisia päätöksiä voidaan tehdä. Taitaa olla mahdotonta mennä nöyrästi pyytämään Venäjältä kaasua, kun on ensin lähettänyt pommeja ja tankkeja sotaan Venäjää vastaan. Kaikkihan me se nähdään, että nämä talousongelmat johtuvat Ukrainan sodasta ja siitä johtuvista talouspakotteista. Aivan kuten Yhdysvalloissakin, niin Saksassa peruselämisen kustannusten massiivinen nousu saa maailman kansat heräämään ja vaatimaan rauhaa sodan pitkittymisen sijaan. Rauhaa saakeli, ei ideologisia himmeleitä. Onneksi valoa tulee nyt maailman uudelta johtotähdeltä eli Yhdysvalloilta. J.D. Vance kertoo maailmalle, miten Yhdysvaltojen suunnan täytyy muuttua.
We have built a foreign policy of hectoring and moralizing and lecturing countries that don't want anything to do with it. The Chinese have a foreign policy of building roads and bridges and feeding poor people, and I think that we should pursue a foreign policy, a diplomacy of respect, and a foreign policy that is not rooted in moralizing, it's rooted in the national interest of this country. Because Ambassador Sullivan is at the lead of moralizing instead of pursuing America's national interest, I object.
Näin. Kun maailmalla halutaan puhua teiden rakentamisesta kaikkien yhteistyön parantamiseksi, niin vanhentunut ja ummehtunut NATO suunnittelee omia rakennusprojektejaan. Rail Baltican avulla saisi kuljetettua NATO-joukkoja Baltian maihin ja Suomeen mahdollisimman nopeasti. Alueellisen turvallisuuden nimissä tietenkin. Videon loppuun Vladimir Putinin puheesta otteita, joiden pitäisi tällä hetkellä näkyä jokaisen valtamedian uutisvirrassa parhaaseen katseluaikaan.
To a certain extent, the moment of truth is coming. The previous world order is irreversibly becoming a thing of the past. One could say has become a thing of the past. And the shaping of the new world order is become the scene of uncompromising fight. Uncompromising, first and foremost, for the reason that it's not even the battle for power or geopolitical influence. It's a clash of the very principles that would be the foundation between the relation, for the relation of the countries at the next historical stage. And its outcome will define whether all of us jointly can build a world that would allow everyone to develop and to solve the outstanding contradictions based on mutual respect of cultures and civilization without coercion and use of force. In the end, can the human society remain a society with its ethical and humanistic principles? Will a human remain a human? And here I'd like to highlight once again, unlike our opponents, Russia does not perceive the Western civilization as an enemy. It does not raise the question, us or them. Who's not with us, he's against us. We never say that. We don't want to pontificate to anyone. We don't want to impose our worldview on anyone. Our position is an open one, and it's the following. The West has accumulated indeed tremendous human, intellectual, cultural, and material resources, thanks to which it can successfully develop, remaining one of the crucial elements of the world system. But it is precisely one of, together with other actively developing countries and states and groups of countries, the notion of hegemony in the new international sphere is off the table. And when Washington and other Western capitals become aware of that and recognize this cold hard fact, then the process of building of the global system in line with the challenges of the future will finally enter the phase of true constructive building. I hope to God that it will happen as soon as possible. It is in common interest.
First, it shouldn't come to a point when a model of a single country or a relatively small part of humanity is taken as something universal and imposed on all the rest. Secondly, no conventional, albeit quite democratically developed code cannot be perceived and prescribed as a directive and irrefutable truth once and for all, because the international community is a living organism whose worth and uniqueness consist in its civilizational diversity, whereas the international law is an outcome of agreements among peoples rather than countries, because legal consciousness is an indispensable and unique part of each culture and each civilization. The crisis of the international law that is being spoken about, in a sense, is growing pains, because the fact that peoples and cultures that, due to different reasons in the past, used to be left in the political sidelines are currently in the ascendant. And it means that their unique perceptions and views and notions of right and justice and law are playing an increasingly significant role in the world. It might seem like there is a lack of coordination and dissonance, but this is just the formative stage, and I'm confident that the world can only be built on the principles of polyphony, with all the themes being woven together in harmony. If you will, we are moving to a polyphonic world rather than a polycentric world, a world in which all the voices have to be heard and, what's most important, listened to. And those who have grown accustomed to playing solo and who wants to continue doing that will have to get used to living in a new world, playing to a new score.